So we have started recording, and the country director will be coming up anytime from now. And just to say briefly who the country director is, the country director has been very involved in the political space ever since the year 2022. And through him, a lot has happened, both across young people in universities and also in the national level political space. He has worked with certain big names for us, for lack of better words, people like Senator Ned Boko. He has worked with someone like that. And he has a good number of people that he has proven his competence when it comes to his about politics and how up to date he is. So today, being that we're going to be interviewing the country director, I should tell you that he is well versed and has in-depth knowledge when it comes to the political space. And also is a very good example for us as the Project Sprint Nigeria to listen to him and also to follow in his steps. So today, like I said, we're going to be covering three major topics. Number one, the new tax bill. The next we'll be covering is the current dispute, or you could call it the current feud between Dangote and PENGASSAN. And then finally, which is also very important, we're going to be talking about the involvement of young people of Nigeria in politics, not for them to become politicians, but for them to become very involved, very interested, very aware, and very up to date about politics and the lawmaking processes of the country. So we are few seconds literally away from starting this interview. And lastly, I'd want to still mention that if you have intentions of asking the question and you are not so certain of your network, of course, we are in Nigeria, so that could happen. If you're not certain of your network, please feel free to type your question in the group, and then we'll read it out to the country director and cover that as well. If it ends before we see your question, or if your question comes in later on, definitely you would get the answer to your question. Maybe not in this meeting, or maybe in the community or the group chat. Okay, so follow along. It's very important that you follow along and also take note of the things he'll be talking about, because like I said, this is directly for young people. The view is tailored for young people, not just for the wider audience of Nigeria or for the entire populace of Nigeria, but for young people. So just hold on a bit and then we'll get the country director connected just right about now. So give me a moment. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are ready. Just before I call upon the country director, I'm not so sure how many of us know already, but we're going to be apologies for that. I initially was going to read out the country director's bio, but we'll just go right to it. So I already said a few things already about the country director, and not so many of us know this already, but he has done quite a number of things behind the scenes and also in front of the scenes when it comes to things about GMO, tax reforms. There are a number of things that the country director has enacted just with his influence. And this session, while you listen, you get to see how much of knowledge he has when it comes to the political space and also how connected he is. And like you remember, we are going to be talking about three major things. First of all, the new tax bill. Not so many young people are very aware of this, so we're going to be covering this particular topic. The very next thing would also be the current dispute between Dangote and PENGASSAN. You could call it a dispute, you could call it a feud. And then the final thing we're going to be covering, which is very important, which is even the whole point of this whole in-house interview, is the youth involvement in Nigeria in the political space. Not for them to become politicians, but for them to just be very aware and up to date about the things that's happening in our country, and also for them to know that they have is in these things. So at this point, I want to thank especially our esteemed country director, Honorable Israel James. Thank you so much, sir, for honoring this invitation. I'm sure you're a very, 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 very busy person. So for you to make out time for this meeting, we are really grateful. So I would want to hear from you at this point. Are we good to go, sir?
Yes, I believe we are very good to go. I'm sure everyone can hear me.
Yes, yes, we can. Okay, so this is just going to be more of a Q&A session where I get to ask the questions and then you provide as much detail, as much, yeah, as much detail as possible as you can connecting to each question. I'm certain that we are not just here to just listen to the answers, but also we're here to actually learn something from these answers you get to give to each question. So thank you once again. I'll just get right to it. The very first thing, like I said, we're going to be covering is connecting to the new tax bill. Ever since ever since this year began, there has been different things, of course, that have come up. But this one in particular has to do with money. And we have a lot of young, very driven people in Nigeria. And seeing how driven they are, it is important that these are things that their attention is drawn to. It's not good that we would have to more or less pamper young people to um, get to do research on these topics, but that is the whole point of Project Sprint, creating more awareness for young people. So I'll just go right to it to start with the first question when it comes to the new tax bill. And yeah, let me just go ahead to start. So the very, very first question here would be, now we have a lot of young people in Nigeria, and these young people have businesses. We have those that are freelancers, and we also have those that don't just earn from Nigeria. And probably one way or the other, in passing or through someone else, they've heard about the tax bill or haven't taken out so much time to do their own research to find out about what this means and also how it connects to them. So just to start off lightly, would want you to please let us know, how do you think that this new tax bill will affect young Nigerians specifically? Could just answer directly or maybe explain a bit. Thank you so much.
All right, so thank you so much for this amazing session, Sister Favor Benson. I really appreciate. Thank you, everyone who's listening, for making out the time to be present today. On the issue of tax, the Nigerian Tax Act, it is now an act because it has been signed and assented to by the president. If you keep calling it a bill, it means you don't know that it's going to affect the outcome of your life. It's now an act. It is now enforceable by law because it has passed, the walls of the Hallowed Chambers and the floors of both the Federal House of Reps and the Senate. Several conversations has happened, build up to getting the tax reform bills become an act. As an organization, early this year, we had the National Youth Dialogue on Tax Reforms, where we tried to discuss on some areas of the tax laws that are very peculiar to young people, especially young people who are trying to contribute to the of the country, people who are productive, and those who have jobs that is paying them, and how the tax bills reflect to them. And so, if you not to speak on matter of tax as an authority, but as someone who has paid keen attention to the conversation for quite some time now, I would say that the the concept of reforming the Nigerian tax laws is a welcome development. It's a very welcome development. Why do I say that? It's because the laws that were governing our tax system were designed over 30 years ago, and very little to no attention was paid to it. We had several cases of multiple taxation and the rest. People could not file for their tax reforms and all because the laws were not transparent enough to make arrangements to, to carry all of those concerns. And so when the issue of the tax reform bills came up, it was actually an excellent time because if you pay attention to the Fourth Republic, we've had 25 years now after the Fourth Republic, which began in 1999. So that was the fourth time that we had a civilian system of government overseeing the affairs of running the country, and that has maintained a steady hand since 1999 amidst every other challenges and all. And so from that time till we've had very little or no discussion around our tax laws. Tax laws are one of the most prominent conversations in any democratic climes because it goes to further explain the role, it shows the role that as citizens we play in contributing to the development of our economy and our country. And so, how does it affect young people if I want to bring it back? Now, as a young person who's making an income, who's running a business in Nigeria, you have to understand that these laws are not designed or targeted to, cripple you at all. Do you understand? But at the same time, there are some areas about the tax bills that needs to be improved upon, which we have tried to. I remember when the discussion on value-added tax came up, we saw some drastic numbers. We saw some people were saying that okay, the proposed number was 10%, some said 14%, but we proposed a 3.5 to 5% at the National Assembly during the National Youth Dialogue on Tax Reforms. But after several debates and uh, would I say compromises being made, the government settled at 7.5%. Now, that number looks fair, but it doesn't reflect the GDP per capita reality of our country right now. If you look at other countries on the global scale who are having the same GDP per capita reality as of that of Nigeria today, we you would see evidently that 3.5 to 5% is the best and the most accruable benchmark for value-added tax. And these are the reasons why a lot of young people need to participate in conversations about tax because it affects the money that you make, it affects the money that you receive. And so some other areas around the tax laws are that we also see a percentage deduction in income, which is the personal income tax. And so, although there are tax cutbacks for certain amounts that is being set aside for accommodation and the rest of the others, but if you're not paying attention to the conversation on tax reforms, one of the things that is going to affect you is that since you are not managing your finances and documenting how you spend, the government is going to tell you that okay, this is how much you have spent and this is how much you owe in tax. You understand? And we are going to have several cases of such from next year, January 1st. That is when the law becomes enforceable, and which means that the conversation of tax should not be a should not be whispered, should not be a conversation amongst friends, but should be a holistic conversation whereby we come together as different subgroups, to talk to government about which part of it is very crucial to us. I'll give you an instance. When the conversation on the tax reform bills were going on, and they were trying to, separate essential goods from non-essential goods, which means if a good is an essential good, there will be no VAT placed on the good. You know, services like our data service and airtime was not placed under the essential products bracket. But we know how these things are very, very essential to our livelihood. As young people, we like a service provider gave a very good headline about data. They say data is life. In our world where technology is controlling almost everything, how we interact, how we do our businesses, how we even study. I don't think this is me speaking personally. I don't think that it is a wise choice to place data and airtime as a non service or product, making it taxable. So these are the conversations around the tax laws that would affect young Nigerians. You see, for some of us who are in the capital market that trade stocks and bonds, I'm very sure that you must have heard about capital gains tax by now. And so, how the percentage in capital gains tax, is it fair for you or is it unfair? And so government is always going to function based on feedback. And so if they throw an opinion out there and there is no, united response in regards to that opinion, it is obviously going to fly. So let's say government wake up tomorrow and they say your personal income tax would be 40% and nobody is saying anything about it. And we just think it is a norm and we are, okay with it and we ride along. We are crippling ourselves. So that's where of young people come in, and that's what we try to do. We are even looking at having a version 2.0 of the National Youth Dialogue on Tax Reforms, to see. We'll discuss some of the wins we had on the first National Youth Dialogue on Tax Reforms, and then the second, let's see what are the things that is present before us, and we are looking to have it to make it an even more holistic and broader conversation, where we are going to work with several groups that accommodate young people across the country, professional groups, skill groups, and the rest of the others, including religious groups also too, because uh, when they have conversations about tax like this, it affects everybody. Nobody is left out. It affects particularly everybody. And my closing word for that question would be every young Nigerian needs to visit the conversation of the Tax Reform Act. There are lots and lots of contents about it. Big kudos to the chairman of the Presidential Tax Reform Committee, Professor Taiwo Ayodele, who has done a lot of job in trying to speak about it, explain holistically, like take his time, and he's never ever exhausted to explain about the tax law. So there are several contents online about the tax laws, and then when you listen to some of them, you would know where government needs to improve upon, because we can't allow government to function in isolation. We must work together with the Nigerian government, to create a demand for accountability and tell them that these laws are not reflecting the concerns of the people. And we can do it in a very constructive manner. We have shown that time and time again, especially at the National Youth Dialogue on Tax Reforms, where we presented 7 prayers to the National Assembly, and 2 out of that 7 was assented to. And we didn't achieve that by burning things on the streets. We had an intellectual conversation where we discussed the issues, the highlights with lawmakers who are the decision makers, the people we have elected to speak on our behalf. And so we expressed the concerns of young people to them, and they made it known. And also, a very and even more crucial aspect of the Nigerian tax laws resources, the administration of our tax data. You know, at the get-go of the discussion on tax reforms, we began to see international organizations and institutions and even countries coming, oh, they should allow, like Nigeria should allow them manage the data that they have experienced and this one, that one. And I don't particularly find that interesting. I find that threatening. Now, if we are not giving our voice to that particular opinion, it's we can wake up tomorrow and then, you know, your tax is being filed in the UK. The administration of your tax is being done outside of your country. You no longer your country now the sovereignty of your country to withhold sensitive data is now being outsourced, to institutions that are not within the country or possibly have ulterior motives. And we have seen some familiar evil faces try to, throw in the light and, ask for governments to approve for them to handle the administration of the tax. And so we can't allow that happen as young people because we have the numbers and we have the voice to speak to back up such a topic. And for me, those are the areas I feel that young Nigerians should pay attention to and speak on it very, very, very urgently and very constructively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, esteemed country director. I've picked already a number of things from what you said. Of course, it is evident that young people have a lot of homework to do when it comes to the tax bill. Now, I want to draw our attention to a few things he said before we go to the next part of the questions. He said that the government will always respond to feedback. And over the longest period of time, as Nigerian youth, we are only familiar with one major way to give feedback to the government, and that has been through protest. And if we have very retentive memory, we'll remember that several of these protests don't exactly end in peace, right? We have a number of these protests that end with or end in vandalization of properties and theft. And this is not exactly the way that we want to approach things like this as Project Sprint. And probably if you don't know yet, SPRINT is an abbreviation, and SPRINT means Strategic Political Response in national transformation. That is to say that in the place where normally young people would want to protest and vandalize properties and vehemently make or prove their points, all we do is simply just talk about our points or use very strategic means to bring up whatever it is we want to change. So there are times when we have seen protests not end the right way. So we are not even going about that whole way. There are different things young people can do and can change in our time. And just like the country director has said, we can do this through strategic dialogue. And if prior to now you don't have enough knowledge about the tax bill, you've probably just heard about it once, but in fact probably you've only just heard about it right now, it's not too late, right? If you heard correctly, he said that we have up until 1st of January, which is exactly when it's going to be fully enforced. So you have between now and then to start doing your own personal research, and beyond just doing your own personal research in your own free time, do it with the knowledge that this is a very urgent thing for you to find out about. Actually seeing that it has to do with your money, and seeing that it also has to do with certain things that might not favor you in the long run. So it's important that you take out your own time to do research on these things. We had two questions for this area of this topic in particular, and amazingly, the country director already answered, because I was going to go ahead to ask about how young people should come into this and how we connect to them, and he already said enough about this. So, like I said, this is going to be uploaded in a few days from now on our YouTube platform. And so if you missed out on anything, look forward to getting to watch the session again. And if you need to repeat it, I would even encourage that if you don't know so much about these things, it is not wrong for you to repeat this video when you get to see it online. Okay, so we're going to go into the next very segment, which is concerning a very important topic. I know that this some names, for example, Pengansa, might be very new to some persons, and I would say I understand, right? I would say I understand, but let me just call out their name in case you don't know them as Pengansa. So Pengansa is Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. I'll take it again. Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. And if you are not up to date about this name or haven't heard anything about it, I'm sure you're very up to date about the recent skyrocketing of gas prices. I don't know if it's across the nation, but I'm certain that over the last 1 week, in places like Lagos, it has been increasing in thousands. I think the first time I heard about the difference was when it moved from, I think, around 1,400 till when it even got to 3,000. And I think above that, maybe now, I don't know. But this is something that should have gotten the attention of people. I mean, we have a lot of young people that are probably fending for themselves, that are paying their bills. They are the ones working. They're the ones probably even sponsoring their entire family. And so these are things that probably should have gotten your attention because it will definitely affect your money. And to see that we had very little um, or very few people talking about this in few days or in the last few days is really a big question mark for us as young people. And so this is why we have brought this up as very important topic to get more light on, to get the country director to shed more light on it. And I'm just going to go right ahead to ask the question. While the country director is talking about these things, please pay attention. And if you have questions that come up in your mind, please feel free to drop it in the group. All right. This is now to the country director, sir. So when big companies and government bodies clash like this, what lessons should I'm going to just go ahead to ask the two questions. You can just touch on both of them randomly. So when big companies and government bodies clash like this, what lessons should young Nigerians learn? Should young Nigerians learn about power, accountability, and business ethics? Very next question would be, how could this kind of field affect opportunities for young people hoping to work or build careers in Nigeria, like oil and manufacturing? And the very final question would also, I think this was supposed to be the first, because it was going to give like a foundation of exactly what this whole field is about. So we would like you to briefly, give like a backstory of how the Dangote and Pengansa issue started, what led to it, and then now go ahead to shed more light on the two other questions, how it connects to us, just in just touching these three major areas of the questions, and also get to help
Okay,
us
so
see.
I would like you
Okay, okay,
to run down the questions again so I can
okay,
take note. I was trying to take note. So if you can take the questions again so I can take note of it.
okay. Thank you. So the very first is, I'm just going to go from the third to the first because the third is the most important. So would want you to give like a backstory of the Dangote and Pengansa disputes that's still ongoing, and also how, like, what led to it. Is there like an inception story to it? So we could just connect the dots. Then the very next would be, when big companies like this clash, the question is, what lessons should young Nigerians learn about power, accountability, and business ethics? Then the final question is, how could this kind of feud or disputes affect opportunities for young people hoping to work or build careers in industries like oil and manufacturing? Those are the questions.
Okay. The third question, what?
The third
Sorry, take
question,
the third question again.
how, okay, how could this kind of feud or dispute affect opportunities for young people hoping to work or build careers in industries like oil and manufacturing?
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to try to speak on the Dangote Pengasa feud um, to the best of what I've been able to collect from several news outlets and a couple of interview sessions with top stakeholders across both parties, both the and the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. So, particularly, this is a labor feud, and as much as we try to simplify the nature of the feud to see that it is an issue between Dangote and PENGASSAN, we have to look at what role such feuds play in our society and our economy. You see, issues like that can lead to um, energy crisis in the country overnight. And so the backstory to the issue is that Dangote fired about 800 workers from his factory who had exercised their constitutional rights to be as their right of association to be members of PENGASSAN. Now, if you are very conversant with Nigerian history, you would know that as a pressure group, PENGASSAN has not been a very quiet organization in the Nigerian political space. They have shaped certain political outcomes at different points in history because they control a critical sector of our economy that should not be accorded um, the word to use would be the slightest mishap. So let's say, for example, now during the Sani Abacha regime, I think that would be 1994, 95, I guess. Had similar issues like this, and they tried to, hold the country to ransom by shutting down the most critical sector of the Nigerian economy, which is the energy, petrol that runs our vehicles, industries, offices, and the rest of the others. And since that was a military regime, it called for a total um, dissolve of PENGASSAN at the time. So you can see as far back as how powerful institutions like PENGASSAN are in the Nigerian society. And so when you have 800 of their members fired by a private institution, now, you, mind you, there was no prior basis or notice as to why they were fired. Now, giving room for a vague interpretation that the reason why these people were fired is because they decided to join PENGASSAN. And so PENGASSAN understands that they have to also protect the rights of its members, because there are labor laws in Nigeria that govern how you employ and how you fire someone from your corporation or your business. And according to them, allegedly, the Dangote group did not follow suit. And so that's the backstory that led to the feud between PENGASSAN and Dangote, and which has led to fuel queues and the rest of the others. You know, energy is a very critical part of our lives here in this country, and if anything happens in that sector, it has a rippling effect on the economy. So that's why you should pay a lot of attention to issues like that and try to understand what's happening in the country. And the second one is, what lessons can we learn about power and accountability in regards to this Dangote Pegasus field? I guess I'm correct.
Yes, you are. Yes.
All right. Okay, so the lessons we can learn is that first and foremost, the the uh, um, the labor laws in our country doesn't seem to be very protective. The reason why I say that is the reason why I say that is this because for the Dangote group to just wake up and say, okay, we want to fire 800 of our staff. A couple of them are young people. Some of them, this is the first job they just had after graduating from school. And if you've been in the corporate world, you understand what it means to have on your resume that you fired. Do you understand? It might affect the course of your career in the long run. And so you can't just decide to fire people or treat people without dignity. We are far away from the era of slavery. So labor currently means that the labor laws right now are designed to protect the dignity of workers so that somebody cannot just prey on them because of capital for reasons best known to them or for capitalist interests. It's not a good place to find ourselves. And so the fact that Dangote Group was able to fire about 800 of their staff, I think the lesson we need to learn from that is that there is a lot of work and advocacy that needs to be done in the aspect of laws. Today it can be Dangote, tomorrow it will be the bank where you work in, and they will just decide to fire you and send you home. Or you can work in the bank for more than 20 years, and when you're retiring, there's no pension or no gratuity for you as a result of that. So we really need to look inwards as a country to check our labor laws and see where can we make some amends. In this case, there are subject matter professionals, I believe, who are experts in labor laws that we can consult, talk to, and have a proper dialogue with them and see to understand where those amendments can be made. So that is the lesson to learn from this. And then number three, how this field can affect opportunities for young people in the said industries. Yes, like I earlier mentioned, um, some of the people that were fired from the Dangote refinery, from the Dangote group, were young people who were just starting out their careers. And so, if you have on your resume that you were fired, this could affect your chances of getting employed in the near future. And so, which takes us back to question two, the lessons learned. So, we need to tighten labor laws, to protect the integrity and the future of young Nigerians who are trying to make a living by working. We shouldn't find institutions trampling on the rights, of young Nigerians who are trying to make a living for themselves and contribute positively to Nigeria and also contribute greatly to the tax brackets. And so this field can affect a lot of things. And so, if it is not properly handled well, some of the people who have been affected by that reduction of staff by Dangote could face harsh conditions, or they could have lesser leverage in discussing salaries for the next company they would like to try to start off continue their career on. And so because once your employer sees on your resume you were fired, it's now your resume looks questionable to them. Why were you fired and all of that? At least they should give them the dignity to resign, if anything at all. That should be like the least thing that can come out of the Pengassan feud with Dangote. I guess that answers all three of the question.
Yes, thank you so much once again, Honorable Israel. And I am really glad that you are really taking all the time to be as detailed as possible. I'll just pick on what you said about the young people that have been fired already. At least it might not be all young people, but we have a number of young people that we can find amongst these 800 that were fired. And like I've seen people that when they were in the process of being interviewed, and even just seeing that the company let them go after a month without even knowing that they were fired or they resigned, that's a very big question mark. So some of these persons, like you said, might have just started their career through this company and all of a sudden get fired. That is going to be a very huge how do I put it? It's going to hamper their credibility, just like you said, for the next company that they get to work with. So based on the things the country director has already said so far, I'm sure not so many people could connect this one thing to all of the things he has said. And I'm hoping that from the things he has already talked about when it comes to the Pengansa ongoing feud with Dangote and how it is being done currently, and also how it's affecting you as a person, things should come to your mind. Silence is consent. So that these people that were fired might not be a relative doesn't mean that you should just be quiet about things like this. And it should tell you that when issues like this come up, like he said, it might not always be Pengansa, it might not always be Dangote, it could be a different company. It's required that as young people we are very prompt to respond, if not to talk, at least to do our own research, then find out how we can come in. So it's important that from all the things you get to hear today in this meeting, in this interview, in this in-house interview, let this draw to your mind that these are things you should have known more, had more detail about. So doing your own research is the whole point, having your own knowledge, being more curious, being more inquisitive about the country Nigeria is also your responsibility. You're not too young, and of course you shouldn't be disconnected. And this is going to lead us to the final part of this meeting, and which is personally for me the most exciting part, because I believe that young people have a lot to do, have a lot to say, and can do a lot of change when we decide to be directly involved in politics, when we decide to become a voice, when we decide to be the lead role, not just in our lives, but in the lives of others as well. When we decide to be a testimony, to be an answer to the cries of many, when we decide to become protagonists, which is very important. So this final part talks about, or this is where we're going to now talk about the level of disconnectedness that young people of Nigeria are from politics. And this doesn't mean that we are trying to make young people politicians, not a bad thing anyway, but there is so much disconnection from between us and politics. And we want to now have drive two questions, to the country director, where he would now say, I would really appreciate that the country director takes his time on this because this is important. The country director is likewise a young person and he's very deeply into politics, not because someone somewhere is sponsoring his entire life, but because this is a selfless act. This is a public service for the good of mankind. And I believe that he has strong reasons for doing these things. And also for others that do the same thing, they have strong reasons and they don't feel like it is a behind the scene of their life, or it is an afterthought. These are things that we're very decided upon to be involved in. So we're going to hear from him at this point concerning these two questions I'm going to ask right away. The very first question is, this is going to be, of course, the country director. So many young people say things like, politics is not for me. And to this statement, I'm sure you've heard it before. So to this particular statement, why do you think that is still a mindset among young people? That's the first question. The very next would be, what can we as young people start doing differently to make our voices count beyond and inside of social media? These are the two questions. And I believe, of course, beyond these questions, beyond the answers to these questions, you have so much more to say on this particular topic. Over to you, country director. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I so much like the first question. Politics is not for me, and why do they think in that direction? The honest answer, okay, the honest answer can come second, but I think the to answer that question, the reason why would be miseducation. Yes, miseducation. You see, so miseducation is a very has played a very vital role in where we are as a country right now. over the decades, So we go to school, we graduate, we become, very good professionals in our field of study. We even go as far as getting awards of performance, outstanding performance in our different fields of practice, outstanding engineer, outstanding doctor, outstanding lawyer, and we are celebrated by family members and friends alike. But the most important entity that we owe our education to, it's like we forget that it exists, which is our nation state. The first entity that you owe the responsibility of your education to is not your parents, it's not your friends, it's not your family, it's not even your spouse. It's your nation state, the country where you come from. You are educated so that you become an agent of social change to your country. And your country or your nation state is the umbrella that covers every other thing that you do. Because if your country is not functioning well, you won't get married on time. You won't even get married to the wife of choice because the woman you want to get married to is probably having an economic struggle, and so she can't even have the mental cognizance to focus on the values that that makes up a family. So she's trying to make a living, and since the country is not conducive enough, she would have to break a lot of moral values to be able to make a living for herself or for her family that is struggling. So you see how the nation states, controls every other thing that you know we hold so dear. And so when you are miseducated, that the reason why you have an education is just for you to make a living, that's the reason why you politics is not for you. Do you understand? And now when they say politics, you don't need to run for office you know, to participate in politics. Abraham Lincoln defines democracy as the government of the people, for the people, and by the people, which means without the people, democracy is just a caricature. You understand? It is just a shadow or a clown of itself, and that is what we have in Nigeria as we speak. I'm not mixing words, and I'm not having water in my mouth when I say that. It's a shame that we have the kind of democracy we have compared to the amount of literates we have in this country. Do you understand? So if you want to know just how deliberate or how poor our democratic system is, I'll give you a number that can reflect to your cognizance quite immediately. The last election that produced the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he won that election with 13 million votes. I think somewhere around that. Well, I know it wasn't 14 million, just 13 million votes in a country of over 250 million people. Inside of that 250 million people, we have over 100 million internet users, which means if you can have a phone and have access to the internet, it's possible that you should have a voter's card. Do you understand? And so, where we exist in a system where just a few is trying to demand the accountability of many, it is not going to work. It's not going to work. It has never worked and it will not work. Mathematically, it's impossible. Like using your brain, like using common sense, it cannot work. It can't work. And so these are some of the issues we have in our country. When somebody say that politics is not for me, I understand that it's miseducation, like you're not informed enough. Do you understand? Because whether or not you die on your way to work, politics is going to play a role. Because if your government is not making the community where you exist conducive enough and provide the right amount of security to make you go out and come back at will, your family can drive out and do whatever it is you want to do. You can start up a business in the community and you don't get robbed. All of that is as a result of good politics that trickles down to driving the dividends of democracy down to where you live. And now, if there is no good political system that is driving the dividends of democracy down to the grassroots levels, that is where you begin to see the decay and decline in society. Because the politics in that area is not working for the betterment of the people, which goes to show that a bulk load of the people don't even know that politics plays that much amount of a role in their life. We leave a lot of things to the hands of of God. Now, I'm not going to say that it is bad for us to do so, to commit our lives into the hand of God, but there are several things that if we can use our brain to do, we won't need God to do it for us anymore. Honestly, if we can have a society where one can make a living for himself, and honest living, provide for himself, provide for his family, and afford the basic little things of life, you don't need to pray to God to give you visa to travel outside of the country. How many times do you see an American in church, God, please give me visa to come to Nigeria? Do you know why they can't do that? Because they have a robust democratic system that is working for them, at least enough to provide their basic amenities. It would never make sense to you that somebody in the United States is praying for Nigerian visa. I'm sure you can't even imagine it. But you can, yeah, I've been invited to churches, and I've sat down there, and some of the prayer points they mentioned was that if you have been looking for visa, may God grant you visa. In that moment, I just knew that we have failed as a country. We failed ourselves. We've refused to demand accountability that would give us the right system of leadership that would trickle down the dividends of democracy down to every level or every socio-economic strata. And so you see, when you say politics is not for me, it's either miseducation or the honest truth, clear-cut irresponsibility. You understand? So you can't exist in an environment, and you want to be ignorant of how the systems that run that environment work, and you expect that the fact that you are shying away from making the system work well, you somehow will be alienated from the consequences or the effect of a decayed system. Maybe because you think you pray too much, or you have a rich father, or you come from a rich home, or you want to just make a living. You are increasing your output and reducing you're reducing your output. You're increasing your output and reducing your input, which means you would labor more to make less, because the system is not designed to work well for you. And you are also folding your hands and looking at the system decay. No, if you live in a house where the roof is leaking and rain is falling, you will not lie down there and say, fixing the roof is not for me. Lie down a little bit longer, and you see that most of your valuable will be drenched and soaked. An intelligent person would at least try to get to the top of the roof, at least if it was at night, to do some makeshifts to be able to manage the situation. And the next thing would be to call a professional. And that is where you participate in the political process by electing a professional, someone that understands systems and government, to make the Nigerian system work well for you, so that you can wake up tomorrow and go to work, and you know that the Nigerian police are well paid to protect lives and properties. You can wake up tomorrow and know that the road you are going to plow from your house to your office is done well, is started well. There are no potholes that lead to accidents on your way to the office. You understand? You know that when your child gets to school, if you can't afford private, there is a public system of education that allows children to learn efficiently, well, and in a conducive environment. And so when things like this are put in place, it's not magic. It's as a result of conscious effort of every member of society contributing largely to making sure that it works well for them. And I believe that addresses question number one. So for question number two, what can we start doing differently? What can we start doing differently? there are a lot of things we can do differently, but I'll try to list them down. First and foremost, the most important thing to do is to join a political party. Be a part of a political party. You can't exist in a democratic system and you are not part of the if a political. Partisan politics is more supreme than the general elections. Do you know the reason why? I'll give you an instance. If I give you two fruits, avocado and guava, and I tell you pick one, do you have a choice or you have options? The simple answer is you have options, you don't have a choice because you are limited to what I can present to you. And that's what political parties do. They present to you options to pick from. And since you were not a part of that system that produced those options, you don't have a choice. You are now left to pick from whatever it is both political parties present to you. And we have seen time and time over again that political parties tend to present the same crop of leaders to pick from. And so we are forced to pick either the worst or the less worst. Do you understand? And so if you're not inside the political party system, you are not part of the leadership, you are not questioning what happens at parties, you are a victim of a decayed system and you are going to live based on what other people have decided for you. And if you think that living based on that is the best for you, congratulations. Which takes us back again to question one. It shows how irresponsible you are. The second thing you can do is to get your voter's card so that at least if you are being presented with worse and less worse, maybe you can at least end up voting less worse. Do you understand? You can get your voter's card. Third thing you can do is be a part of a professional association that you, by reason of education, belong to. If you graduated as a doctor, go and participate in the Nigerian Medical Association. Go and be a part there. Policies are discussed there. You understand? At chapter levels, at state levels, you can you can use those professional associations to demand for accountability in government in the health sector. Do you understand? There are several other professional associations like that exist that you can be a part of and use as a tool for policy change and demand accountability. So those are the three things you can start doing differently. And also, number four, which is very, very much important, please, the news is not something that is meant for old people. I mean, I find it very funny that young people think that it's only old people that should be watching news. The truth is that it is only responsible people that watch news. Irresponsible people feel that whatever it is that is happening in government is not a part of, they are not a part of it. So let's say, for example, if you exist in a family and issues that concern your family is being discussed and you are not there, it means they don't count you responsible enough. And so when you are getting reports on things that are happening in the country, which happens on the news, please participate. Go on the news. It's not going to take a whole day. I'm very much sure use more social media than you listen to the news. Or you can even design your social media in such a way that you follow a lot of these news outlets on the different social medias that you are usually conversant on. Because now most of them they've decided to move from news to social media. So a lot of them are on YouTube, Facebook, X, and I think Instagram also too. So if you follow them on across all of those platforms, at least if you're not getting the full news by watching it, you can at least get the headlines and stay informed on what is happening in the country. I believe that addresses both questions, and thank you so much for the opportunity to answer to those questions. To close on answering those questions, my answers are not designed to make anyone less a person, but rather they are designed to encourage Nigerians to know that there is no way Nigeria will be built without our singular efforts united as one. So every one of us have a role to play at every given place we are. First, there's a role we have to play as an individual, and there's other roles we need to play when we come together as an association. So, as an individual, get concerned, get informed, strive to know what is happening in the country. As a part of an association, as a part of an association, get involved in the day-to-day runnings of that association. Find out what happens. Want to find out to know what role is this association playing in changing the in driving policy change in that specific sphere of influence that you exist in, be it medical, be it as a teacher, be it as an engineer, or be it as a lawyer. Try to, or several other professions, even artisanal institutions. Try to find out how you can participate, as business, as entrepreneurs, as techies. What policy change can you guys come together to effect as an association? And that is my call today to every young Nigerian who would listen to this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, esteemed country director, Honorable Israel James. We are more than grateful. I was even going to ask your final words, and I think you already give us your final words. And I am hoping that amongst all of us that have listened in, they have we have picked something. I picked a lot of things, of course, but beyond the things we've heard, we could also hear your drive. So even if you did not pick anything, definitely what you should go home with or go to bed with at least should be the drive you could hear by just listening to the esteemed country director. That should tell you that if someone could be this driven or sound this passionate while talking about politics, I mean, for all we know, politics is supposed to be boring, but for someone to sound this driven and passionate about politics, it means there's something there. I mean, there's so much we're missing out on by not being interested, by not doing our research, and by not being involved. And so, thank you so much once again. Like I said initially, this session is recorded, and we are going to be uploading this very session on our YouTube channel. It means that you get to have the opportunity again. If you are here already, you get to have the opportunity again to revisit the things that the country director has expatiated on. Some of them he pointed you in the right direction on them, and then it's just for you to go and begin to do your own research on how these things directly influence things that happen in our day-to-day activities, and also things that directly connect to the future of Nigeria. Now, I would really want us to go in deeper on some of these things we've talked about, and that means that with this intent, we're going to have another time where the country director will visit us and have an in-house interview. I feel like this is something that should even happen very often, because this is us literally rubbing minds with him and also understanding where his mind is at. So if you love what happened today, it means that you should look forward to the very next one. We don't know when it's going to happen, but definitely it's going to come up. And I'm not sure if you noted down, but the country director mentioned that there's going to be a second version of the national dialogue that came about earlier this year. It happened in the month of February. And so he mentioned that it's likely to happen again when it comes to tax reforms. And so be on the lookout for when that information comes up, and then please ensure that you get to participate. In fact, beyond just that, we have um, several meetings or training meetings that has been curated for this particular organization, Project Sprint Nigeria. So please ensure that you are very in tune, very up to date about things by just following the group chats so that you don't miss out on anything. Once again, thank you so much to our esteemed country director. We are most grateful for your time. Thank you for taking out the time to explain and answer all these questions in detail. And this brings us now to the end of this particular in-house. Like I said, this is our first ever, and I didn't get to see any questions from anybody, so I'm believing that we don't have any question. Of course, the country director took his time to answer all the questions we asked him. So this is now me saying that we have come to the end of this meeting, and I'm grateful once again to all of you that got to participate. Thank you so much. Like I said, you get to have the recording of this session from Monday. Have a good night, rest everyone. Good night.